Before we begin, welcome to Book Bite, the place where powerful books become life-changing ideas. And today, I want to ask you something. Not a question for the comments, a question only you can answer. Be honest. Part 1. The Trap of Perfection. How much of your life have you spent trying to become a better version of yourself? A little more successful, a little more attractive, a little more productive, a little more confident, a little more disciplined, a little more perfect. It sounds like a noble goal. After all, who doesn't want to improve? But somewhere along the way, self-improvement quietly turned into self-rejection.
So, what exactly is Wabi Sabi? Why has this quiet Japanese philosophy survived for hundreds of years, while so many modern ideas come and go? The answer might surprise you, because Wabi Sabi isn't a method. It's not a morning routine. It's not a productivity system. It's not another checklist promising to make your life perfect. In fact, Wabi Sabi begins by asking a question that modern culture rarely asks. What if you don't need to become someone else to live a beautiful life? Take a moment and think about that. Almost every message we hear today tells us to improve. Be smarter, be richer, be fitter, be more successful. Become the best version of yourself. There's nothing wrong with growth, but somewhere along the way, growth became a never-ending race. We stopped improving because we loved learning. We started improving because we believed we weren't enough. Wabi Sabi gently interrupts that race and whispers something very different. Maybe you don't need to chase beauty. Maybe you've simply forgotten how to see it. The words wabi and sabi don't have a perfect English translation, and perhaps that's fitting, because wabi sabi isn't something you memorize, it's something you experience. It's a different way of looking at the world, a way of slowing down and noticing what everyone else walks past. Imagine you're holding two bowls. The first one is factory-made. Every curve is identical, every surface is flawless, every detail is perfect. Now imagine the second bowl. It isn't perfectly round. Its surface has tiny marks left by the hands of the potter. The color isn't completely even. It has small imperfections, signs that a real human being created it. If you asked modern society which bowl is better, most people would probably choose the perfect one, but Wabi Sabi chooses the other. Why? Because perfection can be copied. Character cannot. Perfection is predictable. Imperfection tells a story. Those tiny marks, those uneven edges, those signs of age, remind us that something has been touched by time, touched by life, touched by human hands. And somehow, that makes it feel more alive. You begin noticing this philosophy everywhere in Japan. Ancient wooden temples that proudly show the marks of time, stone pathways softened by decades of footsteps, simple teacups that become more beautiful with age, autumn leaves just before they fall. Nothing is trying to look brand new forever. Nothing is pretending that time doesn't exist. Instead, age is respected, simplicity is admired, imperfection is welcomed. At first, this way of thinking feels almost strange, because we've spent our entire lives trying to erase imperfections. We paint over old walls, we replace old furniture, we edit our photos, we hide our wrinkles, we pretend we're always okay, as if perfection is the price we must pay to be accepted. But Wabi Sabi asks a completely different question. What if the things you're trying to hide are the very things that make you beautiful? Think about your favorite memories. Were they perfect? Probably not. Maybe it was the road trip where everything went wrong, the meal that didn't turn out as planned but everyone laughed anyway, the blurry family photograph that somehow captures more emotion than the perfectly posed one, the unexpected conversation that changed your life, the rainy afternoon you never planned but never forgot. Those moments weren't beautiful because they were perfect. They were beautiful because they were real. And maybe that's the heart of Wabi Sabi. It isn't asking you to lower your standards. It isn't telling you to stop growing. It's simply reminding you that beauty doesn't suddenly appear when life becomes perfect. Beauty has been here all along, hidden inside the ordinary, the unfinished, the imperfect, the everyday moments we usually overlook. But Wabi Sabi goes even deeper, because it isn't only asking us to accept imperfection, it's asking us to accept something much harder, the fact that nothing stays the same. Everything changes, everything ages, everything eventually comes to an end. And strangely enough, once you stop fighting that truth, life becomes much easier to appreciate. because perhaps the reason life feels so precious is precisely because it doesn't last forever.
There's a truth hiding in plain sight, a truth so ordinary that we almost never stop to think about it. Everything changes. Everything. The seasons change, the weather changes, cities change, technology changes, friendships change, relationships change, dreams change. And whether we like it or not, we change too. Take a moment and think about the person you were 5 years ago, the things that mattered to you, the fears you carried, the dreams you chased. The person you are today isn't the same person. Life has quietly been reshaping you every single day. Yet, despite knowing this, most of our suffering comes from resisting change. We want good moments to last forever. We want youth to last forever. We want success to last forever. We want the people we love to stay beside us forever. We want life to pause, exactly where it feels comfortable. But life has never made that promise, because life was never designed to stand still. It's designed to flow. And perhaps that's exactly what makes it beautiful. Imagine watching a sunset. You know it's going to disappear. In fact, that's the very reason you stop to admire it. Now imagine the sun never set. Imagine the sky looked exactly the same every single day. Would sunsets still feel magical? Probably not. Imagine if flowers never wilted, if autumn leaves never fell, if children never grew up, if nothing ever changed. Would we still appreciate those moments, or would they simply become ordinary? Part of what makes beautiful things beautiful is the fact that they don't last. Their temporary nature gives them meaning. And nowhere is this idea more deeply understood than in Japan. Every spring, millions of people gather beneath cherry blossom trees. Families, friends, strangers, not because the blossoms bloom forever, but because they don't. For only a brief moment, the trees explode into soft shades of pink. The entire landscape transforms. It feels almost magical. And then, just as quickly as they arrived, the petals begin to fall, slowly drifting through the air, covering the ground like delicate snow. Within days, the moment is gone. And strangely enough, that's exactly why it's so precious. If the blossoms remained all year, people would stop noticing them. It's their impermanence that gives them beauty. Wabi Sabi invites us to see our own lives in the same way. Instead of fearing change, appreciate it. Instead of clinging to every beautiful moment, be grateful that you experienced it at all. Instead of wishing time would slow down, allow it to remind you that today matters, because every conversation, every sunset, every hug, every ordinary afternoon is quietly becoming a memory. And perhaps that's why we should be more present while it's here. The truth is, nothing in life was meant to be permanent. Not success, not failure, not happiness, not sadness. Everything moves, everything transforms, everything eventually becomes something else. At first, that idea can feel unsettling, but look at it from another perspective. If painful moments aren't permanent, then neither are your struggles. The anxiety you're carrying today, the heartbreak you thought would never heal, the mistake you keep replaying in your mind, the difficult chapter you're trying to survive. None of them will stay forever. Just as spring eventually becomes summer, this chapter of your life will change too. The same force that takes away beautiful moments also carries away painful moments. And maybe that's one of the kindest lessons Wabi Sabi has to offer. Life isn't cruel because it changes. Life is generous because it allows change. Because change gives us another sunrise, another beginning, another chance. But if everything is temporary, then what about the marks life leaves behind? The wrinkles, the scars, the cracks, the evidence that we've loved, failed, lost, and lived. Most people see those things as imperfections. Wabi Sabi sees them as proof of a life fully lived. And that brings us to one of the most beautiful ideas in all of Japanese philosophy, the idea that broken things don't lose their beauty. Sometimes, they become even more beautiful because they were broken. And that's where our journey takes a deeply personal turn. Part 4. The beauty of broken things. If everything in life changes, then sooner or later, everything gets marked by time. A favorite book develops worn-out pages. A leather chair begins to crease. A wooden table collects tiny scratches. A photograph slowly fades. And people collect scars. Some are visible, most are not. The strange thing is, we don't usually mind seeing age in nature, or in old buildings, or in handmade objects. In fact, we often find those things beautiful, but when the marks belong to us, we tell a different story. We call them flaws, the mistakes we've made, the failures we still regret, the heartbreaks we never fully recovered from, the dreams that didn't work out, the parts of ourselves we'd rather erase. Somewhere along the way, we learn to believe that broken things lose their value. A cracked phone loses value. A damaged car loses value. A torn piece of paper loses value. And without realizing it, we begin treating ourselves the same way. We think, if I failed, I'm less valuable. If I've been rejected, I'm less worthy. If I've made mistakes, there must be something wrong with me. But Wabi Sabi asks us to pause and consider a completely different possibility. What if the crack isn't the problem? What if the crack is part of the beauty? In Japan, there's an ancient art form that brings this idea to life. It's called kintsugi. Imagine a beautiful ceramic bowl. One day, it slips from someone's hands. It falls, it shatters into pieces. Most people would throw it away. After all, it's broken. Its story is over. But kintsugi tells a different story. The broken pieces are carefully gathered, patiently repaired, and instead of hiding the cracks, the artist fills them with gold. Think about how unusual that is. The damage isn't covered, it isn't painted over, it isn't disguised, it's highlighted. The very place where the bowl broke becomes the most beautiful part of it, because the crack is no longer seen as a flaw, it's seen as proof. Proof that the bowl has a history, proof that it survived, proof that it was worth saving. And maybe people aren't so different. Every person you meet is carrying invisible cracks, the disappointment they never talked about, the rejection that changed their confidence, the loss they still think about, the mistakes they wish they could undo, the silent battles no one else knows exist. We all carry them. Some simply become better at hiding them. But here's what's fascinating. When you think about the people who inspire you the most, are they perfect or are they human? The teacher who never gave up on their students, the parent who kept showing up despite their own struggles, the friend who found the strength to smile after losing everything, the entrepreneur who failed 5 times before succeeding, the artist who turned heartbreak into something beautiful. We admire them, not because life was easy, but because it wasn't. Their strength wasn't born from perfection. It was born from perseverance, from healing, from choosing to continue when giving up would have been easier. And maybe that's what real beauty has always been. Not the absence of pain, but the courage to keep living after it. Wabi Sabi reminds us that a meaningful life isn't a life without cracks. A meaningful life is one that has been lived, fully, honestly, courageously. So perhaps your scars deserve a different interpretation. Maybe they're not evidence that you're damaged. Maybe they're evidence that you've loved, that you've risked, that you've failed, that you've learned, that you've survived moments you once believed would break you forever. And maybe those experiences shape the person you're becoming. Because every crack carries a lesson. Every loss carries wisdom. Every difficult chapter leaves behind a quieter kind of strength. When you begin seeing yourself through the eyes of Wabi Sabi, something remarkable happens. You stop asking, how can I hide my imperfections? And you begin asking, what have my imperfections taught me? But if accepting ourselves is so powerful, why is it so incredibly difficult? The answer may not be inside us at all. It may be in the world around us. A world that constantly tells us that who we are today is never enough. And that's where our final lesson begins.
Part 5. Why we struggle to accept ourselves. If Wabi Sabi teaches us to accept ourselves, why is it so difficult? Why do so many kind, intelligent, hard-working people spend years believing they aren't enough? The answer may have less to do with who we are and far more to do with the world we've created around us. Think about your average day. Before you've even finished breakfast, you've already been told who you should become. Be more successful. Be more attractive. Be more productive. Earn more. Own more. Achieve more.
Improve yourself. Optimize yourself. Never stop growing. On the surface, these messages sound motivating, but underneath them lies a dangerous assumption that who you are today isn't enough. Slowly, almost invisibly, we begin treating our lives like unfinished projects, always improving, always chasing, always fixing, but never arriving. We postpone happiness. I'll be happy when I get that promotion. I'll finally relax after I buy that house. I'll feel confident once I lose those extra pounds. I'll love myself someday. And that day never seems to arrive, because every achievement creates another expectation. Every finish line becomes another starting line. The mountain never ends, and after years of climbing, many of us forget why we started. Growth is beautiful. Learning is beautiful. Becoming wiser is beautiful. But constantly believing you're incomplete is exhausting. It's like trying to fill a bucket that has a hole in the bottom. No matter how much you pour into it, it never feels full. Then there's comparison, perhaps the quietest thief of peace. A few hundred years ago, most people compared themselves to a handful of people, their family, their neighbors, their village. Today, we compare ourselves to millions. Open your phone, and within seconds, you'll find someone richer, someone younger, someone more attractive, someone traveling the world, someone building a dream company, someone living the exact life you've imagined for yourself. And no matter how much you've accomplished, there's always someone who seems to have more. The strange thing is, comparison changes what we notice. Instead of seeing everything we've gained, we only see what we lack. We stop noticing our own blessings because we're too busy counting someone else's. And eventually, comparison becomes a habit, a silent voice that follows us everywhere. You should be further ahead. You should look like them. You should have accomplished more by now. You should have figured life out. But according to who? Who decided there was only one timeline for life? Who decided success had to look the same for everyone? Wabi Sabi gently interrupts that voice, not by telling us to stop dreaming, but by reminding us that another person's path can never become the measure of our own. Because here's the truth we often forget. We're not comparing our real lives to someone else's real life. We're comparing our ordinary Tuesday afternoon to someone else's carefully edited highlights. The vacation, not the loneliness. The promotion, not the years of rejection. The smile, not the anxiety hidden behind it. The celebration, not the sacrifices no one ever saw. It's an impossible comparison, and impossible comparisons always end the same way, with unnecessary suffering. Wabi Sabi invites us to step out of that race, not because ambition is wrong. Ambition can inspire us. Growth can transform us. Dreams give life direction. But self-worth should never depend on winning a comparison you were never meant to enter. Instead of asking, why am I not more like them? Wabi Sabi asks something quieter, something gentler. What beauty already exists in my own life? Take a slow look around you. The cup of tea growing cold beside you. The sunlight spilling through your window. The old photographs that still make you smile. The people who stayed, even when life became difficult. The lessons hidden inside your failures. The strength you never realized you were building. The person you've quietly become, simply by surviving everything life has placed in front of you. None of these things are perfect, yet together, they create something no one else has. Your life. And perhaps, that's enough. There's an old Japanese saying often connected with Wabi Sabi. It reminds us of 3 simple truths. Nothing lasts. Nothing is complete. Nothing is perfect. At first, those words can sound almost sad, but listen carefully. They're actually an invitation. If nothing lasts, then treasure this moment. If nothing is complete, then allow yourself to keep growing. If nothing is perfect, then stop demanding perfection from yourself. Because if life itself isn't perfect, why should you be? You don't need to carry the impossible burden of becoming flawless. You don't need to have every answer. You don't need to fix every weakness. You don't need to earn your worth. You already have it. Not because you've achieved enough, not because you've become perfect, but simply because you're human. And perhaps that's the greatest gift Wabi Sabi has to offer. Peace doesn't begin when life finally becomes perfect. Peace begins the moment we stop demanding that it should. And when that happens, something remarkable changes. You stop chasing a better life and begin noticing the beauty of the one already unfolding around you. Which brings us to the final lesson. Because Wabi Sabi isn't simply a philosophy to understand, it isn't merely something to admire. It's a way of living, a way of seeing, and perhaps a way of finally making peace with yourself.
So, after everything we've explored, one question remains. How do we actually live this way? How do we stop chasing perfection when the entire world seems to reward it? The answer is surprisingly simple. Wabi Sabi isn't something you achieve. It isn't a destination waiting somewhere in the future. It's a way of seeing, a quiet shift in perspective, a choice you make again and again, every single day. It begins with slowing down, not because life becomes slower, but because you finally started paying attention to the morning sunlight spilling across your room, to the sound of rain against your window, to the old book that's become worn from being read over and over again, to the coffee mug with a tiny chip on the handle that somehow feels more comforting than a brand new one. These moments seem ordinary until you realize life is made almost entirely of ordinary moments. We're always waiting for the perfect opportunity, the perfect relationship, the perfect job, the perfect version of ourselves, as if happiness has been delayed until everything finally falls into place. But Wabi Sabi whispers something different. Life isn't waiting for you. Life is already happening, right now, in the unfinished conversation, in the imperfect home, in the uncertain future, in the person you are today, not the person you hope to become someday. And perhaps the greatest tragedy isn't that life is imperfect. Perhaps the greatest tragedy is spending so much time chasing perfection that we forget to experience the life that's already here. Think about your own journey, the mistakes you've made, the opportunities you've missed, the friendships that faded, the dreams that changed, the moments you wish you could do over. For years, you may have looked at those memories with regret, but what if you looked at them differently? What if those weren't interruptions to your story? What if they were the story? Because the person you are today was shaped just as much by disappointment as by success, just as much by failure as by achievement, just as much by heartbreak as by love. Every scar taught you something. Every ending prepared you for a new beginning. Every difficult season quietly became part of your wisdom. Without those moments, you wouldn't be you. Before we end, I'd like to leave you with one final thought. Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine meeting yourself 10 years from now, a little older, a little wiser, someone who survived challenges you can't even imagine today. Now ask yourself, if that future version of you could give one piece of advice, would they really say, work harder, be more perfect, fix every flaw? Or would they smile and simply say, you were enough long before you believed you were? Maybe the peace you've been searching for was never waiting on the other side of perfection. Maybe it was quietly waiting inside acceptance all along. So tonight, before you go to sleep, take one slow look around your life. Look at the people you love. Look at the memories you've created. Look at the person you've become. And ask yourself one simple question. What beauty have I been overlooking simply because it wasn't perfect? Because Wabi Sabi leaves us with 3 timeless truths. Nothing lasts, nothing is finished, nothing is perfect. And somehow, those 3 truths don't make life less meaningful. They make every moment infinitely more precious. Thank you for slowing down with me today. And thank you for being part of Book Bite.
If this book changed the way you see yourself, don't let the journey end here. There are countless timeless ideas hidden inside books, waiting to quietly transform the way we think, the way we live, and the way we understand ourselves. If that sounds like the kind of journey you'd like to continue, you're always welcome here at BookBite. Until next time, don't spend your life chasing a perfect story. Learn to love the beautifully imperfect one you're already living.